The fall of D4VD, how one of music's biggest breakout stars ended up charged with murder. 2 years ago, D4VD was one of the biggest breakout stars in all of music. Hundreds of millions of streams, sold out shows, a viral sensation barely out of his teens. Today, he sits in a Los Angeles jail cell, charged with a crime so dark it stopped the entire music industry cold. This is a story of how a rising star ended up here, and of the 14-year-old girl at the center of it. Before we begin, David Burke, known to the world as D4VD, has pleaded not guilty and is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. Everything described here is an allegation drawn from prosecutors and court filings, and we attribute it as such. Out of respect for the victim and her family, we will not detail the graphic evidence. This is a developing case. To understand the fall, you have to understand the rise. David Burke was born in New York and raised in Houston, Texas. He didn't come up through record labels or industry connections. He started out making music for the background of his own video game clips, quiet little songs to play under gaming montages he posted online. It was a hobby, and then it became something else entirely. In the summer of 2022, he released 2 songs, Romantic Homicide and Here With Me. They didn't just do well, they detonated. Teenagers around the world were sending millions of videos to them. Romantic Homicide climbed onto the Billboard Hot 100. Almost overnight, a kid making bedroom demos was one of the most streamed new artists on the planet. The industry came calling fast. Within months, he signed with Darkroom and Interscope Records, a label home to some of the biggest names in music. A full album followed, then another wave of hits. The machine was completely behind him now, and there seemed to be no ceiling. By this point, D4VD was still a teenager. A full album called Withered spots on some of the biggest festival stages in the world. For an artist who had started making beats in his bedroom just a couple of years earlier, it was a meteoric, almost unheard of climb, the kind the industry built entire empires around. And it paid off. Sold out headline tours, festival main stages, thousands of fans screaming every word back at him, brand deals with names like Crocs and Hollister. By the age of 20, D4VD wasn't just famous, he was being called one of the defining new voices of his generation. Everything was going up. And then, all at once, it stopped. In September of 2025, at a tow yard in Los Angeles, workers noticed a foul odor and flies around an impounded car that had been sitting for days. When investigators opened it up, what they found would become one of the most disturbing cases in recent memory. Inside were the remains of a young girl. Her name was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. She was 14 years old, from Lake Elsinore, California, and she had been reported missing. No matter how big the name that would soon be attached to this case, Celeste is who it is really about. Celeste had been missing for a long time. She was a young teenager from Lake Elsinore, reported missing from her home. For many months, her family searched and waited, not knowing that the answer, when it finally came, would be tied to one of the most famous young artists in the country. The vehicle she was found in was a Tesla, and it was registered to D4VD. At the time, he wasn't even in Los Angeles. He was on the road in the middle of a world tour. But that one fact, his name on that car, turned the missing persons case into something far larger. Court filings would later surface an unsettling detail. More than a year before Celeste's body was found, sheriff's deputies had reportedly conducted a welfare check involving her and were told at that time that she was just 13 years old. A warning sign in hindsight that went unheeded. Identifying Celeste took time. The condition of the remains made it difficult. But one detail more than any other defined the early days of this case. D4VD, it emerged, had a tattoo on his finger, a single word, Celeste. And according to prosecutors, Celeste herself had a matching tattoo bearing the singer's name. That ink has since become a central focus of testimony in court. For investigators, the first challenge was simply confirming who the victim was. The remains were badly decomposed. It took careful forensic work and ultimately those distinctive tattoos to establish beyond doubt that the girl found in that car was Celeste Rivas Hernandez. As the story broke, the fallout was immediate and total. His world tour canceled. A planned album re-release shelved. Crocs and Hollister suspended their campaigns with him, and his label Interscope quietly cut ties as the industry moved to pull his collaborations from streaming services. In a matter of weeks, one of music's brightest careers was simply erased. But here is the strange part. Even as the industry ran from him, his music didn't vanish. Romantic Homicide, a song literally named after a killing, actually surged on the streaming charts during the investigation as millions of people searched his name for the very first time. The internet's darkest instinct on full display. As it spread, the case became a global online obsession. Amateur internet sleuths dissected every frame. Old interviews, social posts, and lyrics were pulled apart and reassembled into theories. The internet had appointed itself investigator, for better and very often for worse. Behind the scenes, the investigation was intensifying. D4VD was publicly named as the target of a grand jury probe. His friends were summoned to testify. One appeared before the grand jury. Another potential witness was reportedly arrested. Slowly, quietly, the walls were closing in, and people fixated on the songs. D4VD's music had always leaned dark and romantic. One of his biggest hits was literally called Romantic Homicide. Fans surfaced unreleased tracks that seemed to mention a Celeste. Lyrics that once sounded like teenage heartbreak were suddenly being read in a far more disturbing light. To be clear, a song is not evidence of a crime, but the internet could not unsee it. So what do prosecutors actually allege happened? According to court filings, Celeste died in April of 2025, months before her body was ever found. They allege that D4VD and Celeste had a relationship and that it began when she was just 13 years old. A prior welfare check, the filings note, had already flagged her age. And prosecutors allege a motive. They claim that when Celeste threatened to expose the relationship, she was killed to keep her silent. That is the state's theory of the case. It has not been proven, and the defense disputes it entirely. The case prosecutors have presented is detailed and circumstantial. They point to online orders, a shovel they allege purchased the day after Celeste's death, more items they say bought under a fake name in the days that followed. We are not going to describe what prosecutors say those items were for. The 3 charges he now faces speak for themselves. D4VD is charged with 3 felonies: first-degree murder with special circumstances, continuous sexual abuse of a child under the age of 14, and the unlawful mutilation of human remains. He has pleaded not guilty to all 3. In April of 2026, roughly 7 months after Celeste was found, David Burke was arrested at a home in the Hollywood Hills and booked into a Los Angeles police station. The rising star was now an inmate. When he was arraigned, David Burke stood before a judge and entered his plea not guilty on every count. His legal team made clear they would fight each charge, and a case that had played out for months in headlines and online forums was, at last, headed into a real courtroom. Which brings us to right now. A preliminary hearing is underway in Los Angeles. One prosecutors expect to last days. They have called detectives to the stand and presented evidence, including graphic photographs. Celeste's family has been in the courtroom forced to sit through the very worst of it. So what is this hearing actually deciding? Not guilt. A preliminary hearing has one job. A judge listens to the prosecution's evidence and decides whether there is enough of it to send the case to a full trial. It is a low bar, probable cause, and the district attorney has said he is confident he will clear it. There is one more thing hanging over this case. Because the murder charge carries special circumstances, D4VD is eligible for the death penalty, and the district attorney has said it remains on the table. That decision, if it comes, would raise the stakes to the absolute maximum. For his part, D4VD's attorneys have denied all of it. They have challenged the evidence, the timeline, and the state's theory at every turn. And under our system, that is their right. The entire burden falls on the prosecution to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. As of today, nothing has been proven, and in the eyes of the law, D4VD remains innocent. How does someone go from the very top of the charts, festival stages, platinum songs, brand deals, to a jail cell facing a possible death sentence? That is a question that has gripped millions of people around the world. It is the reason this case is everywhere you look right now. This case has forced an uncomfortable conversation. Millions of young fans felt like they truly knew D4VD through his music, his posts, his voice, and their headphones every night. And it raises a hard question that has nothing to do with any verdict. How well do we ever really know the people we admire from a distance? But in all the noise around a famous name, it is easy to lose a person who cannot speak for herself. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was a child. Her family held a vigil for her. They held a funeral. And they are now sitting in a courtroom, waiting, like everyone else, for answers that may never fully come. Whatever happens next in that courtroom, remember her name. Celeste Rivas Hernandez was 14 years old. This case is far from over. The hearing continues, a trial may follow, and we will update you the moment anything changes. For every case we are following, the channel has got you. Subscribe and follow this one with us to the end. We'll keep following this case as it moves toward trial. Take a moment to remember the young girl at the center of it all. Rest in peace, Celeste. This has been Crime Time TV.